Amber Robinson halted mid-wipe, her dust cloth trembling, as Billionaire CEO Edward Wallace flaunted an Arabic contract before his chuckling executives. Her hidden fluency in Arabic, French, and English pulsed beneath her calm exterior. "Translate this by Friday, and my company is yours," he taunted, his eyes darting to Amber with a smirk. "Though I doubt our maid picked up Arabic at cleaning school." The boardroom roared with laughter, but Amber's heart pounded. Her family's home teetered on foreclosure in 72 hours, and his cruel challenge might be her only shot. Amber's days were a tightrope walk, scrubbing floors at Wallace Innovations until midnight, coaching her brother Jamal through college prep, and juggling her grandmother's diabetes meds. The $32,000 to save their Baltimore row house hung over her like a guillotine blade. Her linguistic genius, a gift from her late mother, a linguistics professor lost to a car crash, remained her secret weapon, safeguarded in a leather-bound journal etched with words unlock worlds. At Wallace Innovations, a titan in AI security, Amber was a shadow, polishing desks while executives like Cassandra Holt schemed over billion-dollar deals. Holt's icy stares and Edward's smug jabs, "Why hire translators when AI does it cheaper?" kept Amber silent, her job's health benefits her fragile lifeline. Yet with the foreclosure notice burning a hole in her pocket and Edward's taunt echoing, the risk of exposure loomed large. Could her buried talent rescue her family, or thrust her into the jaws of corporate predators? Amber stood motionless in the boardroom's dim afterglow, the echo of Edward Wallace's mocking laughter still ringing in her ears. Her fingers gripped the leather-bound journal tucked under her arm, its inscription, "Words unlock worlds," pressing against her skin like a silent promise. The $32,000 foreclosure notice crumpled in her pocket, felt heavier than the dust cloth dangling from her hand. Edward's taunt, "Translate this by Friday, and my company is yours," had lit a spark she couldn't ignore. With 72 hours ticking down, the Arabic contract he'd flaunted was more than a billionaire's jest. It was her lifeline. Her heart pounded as she glanced at the abandoned document on the table, its intricate script a map to her family's salvation. Could her buried talent rescue them, or would it thrust her into the jaws of corporate predators? For now, the answer lay in the shadows. She waited until the building emptied, the hum of executives fading into the night. At 1 a.m., under the sterile glow of the conference room lights, Amber pulled the contract toward her. Her mother's journal, worn from years of secrets, fell open to a page of Arabic technical terms, phrases her mother had scribbled during late-night lessons after Amber's childhood homework. The AI-generated draft was a mess, mistranslated clauses, garbled syntax, a disaster waiting to sink a deal. Amber's pen danced across a notepad, correcting errors with precision, her fluency weaving through the text like a lifeline. She dubbed herself Shadow Linguist, leaving the revised sections on the table with a cryptic note and signed to shield her identity. The risk was immense. Discovery could cost her job, her health benefits, her grandmother's care, but the foreclosure deadline loomed like a guillotine. This was her shot. The contract's stakes unfolded as she worked. It was a $2 billion deal with a Saudi tech firm to integrate Wallace Innovations' AI security platform into their global network. The AI's initial translation had botched critical terms, misrendering data encryption as data exposure, a blunder that could unravel the partnership. Amber's corrections tightened the language, ensuring compliance with international standards. By 3 a.m., her eyes burned, but the revised pages glowed with potential. She slipped out, leaving her work as a silent offering, praying it would reach the right hands without exposing her. The next morning, mid-level manager Priya Shah found the notes. A sharp-eyed analyst with a quiet demeanor, Priya had long questioned the company's reliance on AI translations. She pored over the revisions, her brow furrowing as she traced the elegant Arabic fixes. "Whoever did this knows their stuff," she muttered to a colleague, unaware of the maid who'd scrubbed the same table hours earlier. The corrections impressed her enough to present them to Edward during a briefing, crediting the mystery contributor. Amber, polishing a nearby credenza, overheard Priya's praise and felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this could work without her name attached. But that hope shattered when Cassandra Holt swooped in. The VP, with her sleek blazer and predatory smile, snatched the notes from Priya's hands during the meeting. Amber froze, dust cloth in midair, as Holt erased the shadow linguist's signature with a swift stroke of her pen. "These are my revisions," Holt declared, her voice smooth as silk. "I've refined the AI output overnight." Edward leaned back, his laughter replaced by a nod of approval. "Well done, Cassandra. This could save the deal." The room buzzed with admiration, and Amber's stomach twisted. Betrayal stung like a slap, her work, her risk, claimed by the woman who'd dismissed her with icy stares. She bit her tongue, her job's fragility pinning her silence, but her fist tightened around the cloth, knuckles whitening with suppressed rage. That evening, Amber trudged home to their Baltimore row house, the weight of the day pressing on her shoulders. Inside, the air smelled of her grandmother's herbal tea, a faint comfort amid the creaking floors. Jamal bounded down the stairs, his face alight with excitement. "I aced my scholarship interview prep today, sis. They're calling tomorrow." His grin warmed her, a reminder of why she fought. But her grandmother's cough interrupted, sharp and wet, pulling Amber to her side. The diabetes was worsening, the meds barely holding it at bay. "You look tired, child," her grandmother rasped, her eyes searching. Amber forced a smile, hiding the foreclosure notice and the theft of her work. The $32,000 gap grew more desperate. Jamal's future, her grandmother's health, their home, all teetering on the edge. Back at Wallace Innovations the next day, the pressure mounted. Priya approached Amber during a break, her voice low. "Those translations were brilliant. Any idea who's behind them?" Amber's heart skipped, but she shrugged, mumbling about late-night cleaners. Priya's gaze lingered, curious but unconvinced, a potential ally in the making. Meanwhile, Holt strutted through the halls, her stolen credit boosting her status. Amber overheard her on a call, bragging to a colleague, "Just a few tweaks, and the Saudi deal's mine." The lie fueled Amber's fear. Exposure could ruin her, but silence might cost her family everything. As she wiped a smudge from Holt's office window, her fist clenched again, torn between anger and the terror of what lay ahead. The clock ticked toward Friday, 48 hours from the deadline. Amber knew she couldn't stop now. That night, she returned to the boardroom, her mother's journal her guide. She corrected another section, her pen steady despite the tremor in her hands. The shadow linguist would fight on, but Holt's theft had changed the game. Amber's invisibility, once her shield, now felt like a cage. As she slipped out, the city skyline glowed beyond the windows, a silent witness to her quiet rebellion. The key moment loomed. Would she stay hidden, or would Holt's betrayal force her hand? Amber slipped back into the boardroom under the cloak of midnight, the city skyline a faint glow beyond the windows. Her mother's leather-bound journal rested on the table, its pages crinkling as she turned to a section on Arabic legal phrasing. The shadow linguist had to keep moving. 48 hours remained until the Saudi deadline, and the foreclosure guillotine loomed just 72 hours away. Her pen scratched across a fresh notepad, refining another chunk of the $2 billion contract with the Saudi tech firm. The AI's botched translations had been a goldmine for her corrections, each fix a step toward saving her Baltimore row house. But as she deciphered a dense paragraph, her breath caught. A clause buried in the text leaped out, its implications chilling her to the core. The Saudi firm would gain access to user data from Wallace Innovations' AI security platform, a breach that could expose the private lives of Baltimore's low-income neighborhoods, including her own. Her hand stilled, the pen hovering over the page. The words blurred as she reread them. Unrestricted data access, no opt-out, a potential goldmine for exploitation. Her mind raced to the cramped streets she called home, where families like hers scraped by, their data a vulnerability in a world of tech giants. This wasn't just a deal, it was a threat. Amber's pulse thundered. Her translations could seal this contract, securing the $32,000 to save her family. But at what cost? She leaned back, clutching the journal, its inscription. Words unlock worlds. Now a question mark. Her mother had taught her language was power, a tool to uplift, not to exploit. Had she inherited that wisdom only to wield it against her own community? The dilemma gnawed at her as she packed up, the corrected pages a heavy burden. Helping Wallace Innovations meant personal gain, Jamal's scholarship, her grandmother's care, their home. But protecting her neighbors meant sabotaging the deal, risking everything she'd fought for. She recalled her mother's voice from those late-night lessons, soft but firm. Words can build bridges or burn them, Amber. Choose wisely. The memory steadied her, but the choice felt like a noose tightening. She slipped out, the contract's weight pulling her into a moral abyss. At home, the row house's familiar creaks offered no comfort. Jamal bounded in from the kitchen, his face bright with a teenager's hope. "You okay, sis? You've been off since yesterday." His eyes searched hers, assuming the foreclosure notice was her burden. Amber forced a nod, her smile brittle. "Just tired, Jamal. How's the scholarship prep?" He launched into details about his interview, oblivious to the storm in her mind. She listened, her heart aching. He deserved this chance, and her grandmother's worsening cough from the next room underscored the stakes. But the contract's secret burned in her silence, isolating her in a web of her own making. The next day at Wallace Innovations, tension crackled like static. Amber pushed her cleaning cart through the halls, her mind replaying the clause. As she passed Holt's office, the VP emerged, her smirk cutting like a blade. Accidentally bumping the cart, Holt sent mops and rags sprawling across the floor. "Oops," she purred, her eyes glinting. "Stick to mopping, not meddling, Robinson." The taunt stung, a reminder of Holt's stolen credit and her rising status. Amber knelt to gather the mess, her fists clenching around a fallen cloth. Holt's antagonism escalated the pressure. Every sneer pushed Amber closer to a breaking point, yet exposure remained a gamble she couldn't afford. That night, Amber returned to the boardroom, the silence amplifying her turmoil. Lamplight cast shadows across the table as she reopened the contract, her mother's journal beside it. She traced the offending clause again, the Arabic script a stark confession of intent. Her neighbors' faces flashed in her mind, Mrs. Carter next door, struggling with rent, the kids playing in the street, unaware of the digital net closing around them. Her pen hovered, torn between correction and destruction. The journal's pages rustled, revealing her mother's note. Language is a shield for the vulnerable. Tears pricked her eyes as the realization hit. Her translation could harm those she'd sworn to protect. The key moment crystallized. Amber sat frozen, the lamplight reflecting off the journal, her decision a battle between survival and sacrifice. The clock ticked toward Friday, the deadline tightening like a vice. At home, Jamal's voice broke through her reverie. "You sure you're okay? You look like you're carrying the world." She squeezed his shoulder, hiding the truth. Her grandmother shuffled in, her frail hand brushing Amber's. "Trust your heart, child," she whispered, sensing the unspoken. But Amber's heart warred within her, save her family or shield her community. The contract's hidden threat had shifted the game, and Holt's taunts only fueled her resolve to find a way out. As she stared at the journal, the weight of her mother's legacy pressed harder, demanding a choice that could redefine her path. Amber sat hunched over the boardroom table at 2 a.m., the city skyline a faint blur beyond the windows. The lamplight flickered across her mother's journal, its pages open to the clause that haunted her, the Saudi firm's data access threat to her community. With 48 hours until the contract deadline and 72 hours until foreclosure, every second pulsed with urgency. Her pen scratched furiously, rewriting the translations from memory, the shadow linguist, fighting to protect her neighbors while salvaging her family's future. But as she worked, the door creaked open. Cassandra Holt strode in, her heels clicking like a predator's claws. Before Amber could react, Holt snatched the notepad, smirked, and upended an ink bottle over it. Black liquid bled across the pages, obliterating hours of work. "One wrong word could tank this deal," Holt taunted, her voice a venomous whisper. Then, with a flick of her wrist, she deleted Amber's digital drafts from the shared drive. Amber's heart sank. The sabotage was deliberate, and her lifeline was slipping away. Stunned, Amber gathered the ruined notes, ink staining her fingers like blood. Holt's theft of her credit had escalated to destruction, a power play to cement her rise. With only 48 hours left, Amber faced a race against time, her memory the sole thread to reconstruct the contract. The weight of it crushed her: Jamal's scholarship, her grandmother's care, the row house, all hinged on this fragile hope. She stuffed the journal into her bag, her mind reeling, and slipped out into the pre-dawn chill, the foreclosure deadline tightening like a noose around her neck. The morning brought no respite. At 8:26 a.m. AST on Tuesday, October 21st, 2025, Amber's phone buzzed with a frantic call from Jamal. Grandma collapsed, her sugars spiking. His voice cracked, pulling her from the office haze. She raced to the hospital, her savings dwindling with every test and drip. Her grandmother lay pale in the bed, oxygen tube in place, her frail hand clutching Amber's. "I'll be okay, child," she rasped, but the doctor's grim nod said otherwise. The $32,000 gap grew wider, medical bills piling onto the foreclosure threat. Amber slipped her grandmother's hospital bracelet onto her wrist, a tangible reminder of the stakes, her exhaustion deepening with every breath. Back at Wallace Innovations, the pressure mounted. As Amber pushed her cleaning cart, Priya Shah cornered her near the break room, her voice low and urgent. "Those translations, Holt's claiming them, but they're too good for her. Any idea who's behind it?" Amber's pulse raced, Priya's suspicion a double-edged sword. An ally could help, but exposure could ruin her. "Just late-night cleaners, maybe," she mumbled, avoiding Priya's gaze. Priya frowned, unconvinced, but let it drop, her curiosity a flicker of hope amid the chaos. Amber moved on, her mind a storm. Holt's sabotage had forced her hand, yet revealing herself remained a gamble. That night, Amber returned to the boardroom, her body heavy with fatigue. The ruined notes mocked her from the trash, but her mother's journal offered a lifeline. She flipped through its pages, finding a section on Arabic AI terminology, her mother's meticulous notes on encryption protocols and data sovereignty, a treasure trove she'd overlooked. The words bolstered her confidence, a beacon in the darkness. She grabbed a fresh notepad, her pen trembling as she began rewriting from memory, the hospital bracelet a cold weight on her wrist. Each line was a battle, her mind piecing together the contract's intricate web. The ticking clock, 48 hours to the deadline, 72 to foreclosure, drove her forward, Holt's taunt echoing like a dare. The silence pressed in, broken only by the scratch of her pen. She recalled her mother's lessons, language as resilience, a shield against adversity. The journal's wisdom fueled her, but the physical toll mounted. Her eyes burned, her hands cramped, yet she pressed on, the bracelet a silent motivator. The key moment arrived as dawn crept through the windows. Exhausted, she paused, the rewritten page before her, her grandmother's bracelet glinting under the lamplight. The sabotage had tested her limits, but her resourcefulness held firm. The question lingered: could she finish in time, or would Holt's next move seal her fate? Amber slumped at the boardroom table, the first light of Tuesday, October 21st, 2025, filtering through the windows at 8:28 a.m. AST. Her grandmother's hospital bracelet clung to her wrist, a cold reminder of the stakes as she rewrote the contract from memory. With 48 hours until the Saudi deadline and 72 hours until foreclosure, the ticking clock pressed harder. The ink-stained ruins of her earlier work haunted the trash bin, but her mother's journal had become her anchor, its pages a lifeline against Holt's sabotage. Yet as she rubbed her aching hands, the door swung open, and Cassandra Holt stormed in, a manila folder clutched like a weapon. Amber's stomach dropped. Holt's smirk revealed she'd uncovered something damning. "Personnel files are fascinating, Robinson," Holt sneered, flipping open the folder to reveal Amber's mother's academic credentials, a linguistics professor at Johns Hopkins before her death. "Unauthorized access to a $2 billion contract? That's grounds for termination." Her eyes narrowed. "And your brother's scholarship?" "One call, and it's gone." The threat hit like a punch, Holt's voice a venomous hiss. Amber's fear peaked, her chest tightening. Exposure could shatter Jamal's future, her grandmother's care, their home. She gripped the table's edge, silent, the weight of Holt's blackmail isolating her in a tightening trap. Shaken, Amber retreated to a supply closet, her hands trembling as she rummaged through her bag. Amid the clutter, her fingers brushed the familiar leather of her mother's journal, forgotten since the hospital rush. She pulled it out, its pages crinkling as she opened it, a surge of hope cutting through her dread. Plot twist 5 unfurled. Nestled within were detailed notes on AI contract terms, her mother's precise annotations on encryption and data protocols, a resource Holt stolen, incomplete work couldn't match. The discovery was a turning point, the journal's wisdom a shield against the VP's treachery. Amber's breath steadied. She had an edge, if she dared to use it. By nightfall, she devised a plan. Returning to the boardroom, she crafted a decoy translation, weaving in subtle errors, mistranslating data sovereignty as data allocation, a flaw Holt wouldn't catch. She left it on the table and signed a baited hook. The next morning, Holt pounced, presenting the decoy during a briefing with Edward and Priya. "My latest refinements," she boasted, her confidence blinding her to the mistakes. Amber, polishing a window nearby, overheard Edward's frown. "This allocation term seems off," he muttered, and Priya's sharp intake confirmed it. Holt's lack of fluency exposed her fraud, a crack in her armor Amber could exploit. The victory was silent but sweet, fueling her resolve. At home, the row house's warmth offered a brief reprieve. Jamal sat at the kitchen table, textbooks spread out, his scholarship interview looming. Noticing her pallor, he set down his pen. "You're fighting something big, sis. What's going on?" His concern pierced her isolation. She hesitated, then shared a vague worry about work, but Jamal leaned closer. "Mom always said words were our strength. She inspired me to chase this scholarship. Don't let anyone take that from you." His words echoed her mother's lessons, strengthening her resolve. The journal's presence in her bag felt like a call to action, a legacy to honor. Back at Wallace Innovations, the pressure intensified. Holt's glare followed her, the blackmail thread a shadow over every move. Amber stole moments to study the journal, its notes sharpening her strategy. That night, alone in the boardroom, she opened it again, the lamplight casting shadows across the page. Her finger traced her mother's handwriting, and she whispered, "Words unlock worlds," the phrase a mantra. The key moment crystallized, exhausted but determined. She began plotting her counterattack, the journal her guide. Holt's sabotage and threats had pushed her to the edge, but this breakthrough lit a path forward. The question lingered. Could she turn the tables before time ran out? Amber stood in the boardroom at 8:33 a.m. AST on Thursday, October 23, 2025, the city skyline a muted backdrop to her racing pulse. With 24 hours until the Saudi deadline and 48 hours until foreclosure, the moment of truth loomed. Her mother's journal lay open on the table, its pages marked with notes on AI contract terms, a testament to her expertise. The hospital bracelet on her wrist gleamed faintly, a reminder of her grandmother's fragile state and Jamal's scholarship hanging in the balance. Holt's blackmail and sabotage had pushed her to the edge, but the journal's rediscovery had sparked a plan. Today, she would end the shadow linguist anonymity. She gathered her evidence, a USB drive with security footage of Holt deleting her files, and the journal as proof of her work. Her hands trembled as she rehearsed her lines, the ticking clock driving her resolve. Courage was her only weapon now. The Friday board meeting convened at 9 a.m., the room buzzing with tension. Executives filled the sleek chairs, Edward Wallace at the head, his calculating gaze scanning the room. Holt strode in, her confidence unshaken, clutching the flawed decoy translation Amber had planted. "My final revisions," she announced, projecting the document onto the screen. The room nodded, but Amber's heart steadied. She knew the errors embedded within. As Holt elaborated, misrepresenting data sovereignty as data allocation, Amber rose, her voice cutting through the hum. "That's incorrect," she said, stepping forward. In flawless Arabic, she corrected, "It's data sharing, a critical distinction." The room froze, heads turning as she revealed herself as the shadow linguist, Climax 1. Holt's smirk faltered, her face paling. Amber pressed on, plugging the USB into the projector. The security footage played, Holt spilling ink, deleting files, her taunt clear as day. Gasps rippled through the room, the evidence a hammer blow to Holt's facade. "This is my work," Amber declared, holding up the journal. "Stolen and sabotaged." Edward's eyes widened, skepticism etching his features. He leaned forward, testing her. "Translate this," he barked, reciting a complex Arabic phrase about encryption protocols. Amber's response flowed seamless and precise, her mother's lessons anchoring her. The room held its breath, the power dynamic shifting beneath her feet. Then, a video call pinged on the screen, connecting to Saudi CEO Khalid Al-Mansour. His sharp eyes studied Amber, then the translations. "These bear the style of Lucia Robinson," he said, his voice resonant. "I worked with her on past projects, her daughter, I presume?" Amber nodded, stunned. His recognition validated her heritage, linking her to her mother's legacy and elevating her from Maid to pivotal figure. Holt's chair scraped as she stood, protest dying on her lips, her humiliation complete. Edward's jaw tightened, processing the audacity before him. The key moment crystallized as Amber spoke again, her Arabic steady, commanding the room. Holt's face drained of color, her hands clutching the table, while Edward's widened eyes betrayed a mix of shock and grudging respect. The footage looped, Holt's sabotage undeniable, and Al-Mansour's endorsement sealed her triumph. Amber's heart pounded, not just for the $32,000 to save her home, but for the justice her mother's journal had unlocked. The boardroom, once a cage, now bent to her will. The question lingered, could she sustain this power, or would the fallout claim her yet? Amber stood firm in the boardroom at 8:40 a.m. AST on Friday, October 24th, 2025, the air thick with the aftermath of her revelation. The security footage still glowed on the screen, Holt's sabotage laid bare, while Khalid Al-Mansour's voice lingered from the video call, his endorsement of her mother's legacy ringing in her ears. With 24 hours until the Saudi deadline now reduced to mere minutes and 48 hours until foreclosure, the tension coiled tighter. Edward Wallace's calculating gaze shifted from shock to calculation, his fingers drumming the table. Amber's heart pounded, the hospital bracelet on her wrist a cold anchor, but her mother's journal in her hands steadied her resolve. The power dynamic had tilted, now she would claim her due. Climax 2 erupted as Edward leaned forward, his voice grudging but firm. "Al-Mansour's trust in you is clear," he said, eyeing the journal. "Name your terms." Amber seized the moment, her voice steady despite the adrenaline. "A $50,000 bonus, job security, and protection for my brother's scholarship." The room held its breath, Holt's pale face twitching with rage. Edward nodded, a rare concession driven by profit and pressure. "Done." Security escorted Holt out, her heels clacking in humiliated retreat, her career crumbling under the weight of her own deceit. Amber's chest swelled. Jamal's future, her grandmother's care, their home were secured, the blackmail lifted like a shadow dispelled. With 15 minutes to the 8:45 a.m. deadline, Amber turned to the contract. Climax 3 unfolded as she opened her mother's journal, its notes on data privacy protections guiding her pen. She clarified the clause, ensuring the Saudi firm's access was restricted, safeguarding her community's data. The revised translation flowed from memory and heritage, a testament to her mother's wisdom. At 8:44 a.m., she handed the finalized document to Edward, who relayed it to Al Mansour via video call. The CEO's approval came at 8:45 a.m., his nod saving Wallace Innovations' reputation and sealing the $2 billion deal. The room exhaled, Amber's triumph a quiet thunder. Priya Shah approached, her expression softened. "I underestimated you, Amber. I'm sorry." Her voice carried genuine regret. "Let me mentor you, navigate this world together." Amber nodded, a flicker of alliance warming her. The offer hinted at future growth, a bridge from maid to leader. Edward, still profit-driven, acknowledged her with a curt, "Well played," his respect a grudging crown. The boardroom, once a cage, now bowed to her influence. That afternoon, Amber raced to the bank, the $50,000 bonus clearing the $32,000 foreclosure debt. The row house was theirs, the guillotine stayed. She then visited her grandmother, the hospital room bathed in soft light. Her grandmother's frail hand gripped hers, her eyes searching. "You did it, didn't you?" she whispered, sensing the triumph beneath Amber's exhaustion. Amber smiled, the bracelet a shared bond, her victory a silent gift to the woman who'd raised her. The key moment arrived as she returned to Wallace Innovations. Standing before Edward, she handed him the finalized contract, her mother's journal tucked securely under her arm. His fingers brushed the pages, a flicker of curiosity in his eyes, but the deal was done. The weight lifted, her family saved, her community protected, her path forward illuminated. Yet the question lingered, could she sustain this victory, or would new challenges test her resolve? Amber stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her new office at 8:42 a.m. AST on Tuesday, April 21, 2026, 6 months after the boardroom gambit that changed her life. The Baltimore skyline stretched before her, a testament to her ascent from maid to head of global partnerships at Wallace Innovations. The hospital bracelet, now a keepsake in her drawer, had been replaced by the weight of responsibility, but her mother's leather-bound journal rested proudly on her desk, its inscription, "Words unlock worlds," a beacon of her triumph. The $50,000 bonus had saved their row house, Jamal's scholarship was secure, and her grandmother thrived in a better care facility. Yet the journey had only begun, and today, she would cement her legacy. At 9 a.m., Amber launched Talent Unveiled, a program born from her own invisibility. In the sleek conference room, she addressed 35 overlooked employees, janitors, clerks, and techs, whose skills had been ignored. Among them was Marcus, a janitor with a cybersecurity degree, his eyes lighting up as she handed him a promotion letter. "Your talent deserves a stage," she said, her voice steady with conviction. The room buzzed with hope, a ripple of change echoing her rise. The initiative, funded by the Saudi deal's profits, aimed to unearth hidden potential, mirroring her own path from shadows to power. The Saudi deal had transformed Wallace Innovations, boosting market share by 28%. Amber's data privacy advocacy, rooted in that fateful clause, had rewritten the contract to shield Baltimore's low-income neighborhoods, including her own. Her community thrived, free from the digital exploitation she'd once feared, a victory etched in every secure transaction. The $2 billion partnership with the Saudi tech firm stood as her crowning achievement, yet the corporate world remained a battlefield. Edward Wallace, still profit-driven, acknowledged her value with a curt nod during strategy meetings, his distance a reminder of his elitist roots. "You've turned a liability into an asset," he'd said once, his praise laced with calculation, never warmth. Holt's shadow had faded. Disgraced and ousted, she now taught online courses, her smugness replaced by obscurity. Amber occasionally glimpsed her name in low-tier webinars, a quiet satisfaction in her downfall. The power dynamic had shifted irreversibly, Holt's sabotage a footnote to Amber's ascent. Priya Shah, her mentor, had become a trusted ally, guiding her through corporate navigation with a steady hand. Together, they refined Wallace's diversity policies, each step a brick in a new foundation. That afternoon, Amber sat at her desk, the journal open before her. She traced her mother's handwriting, reflecting on the legacy that had carried her here. The pages, once a shield against despair, now symbolized her triumph, language as a tool to uplift, not exploit, just as her mother had taught. The weight of those lessons had shaped her advocacy, her leadership, her life. As she reviewed a new contract, a community protection clause caught her eye, a safeguard against data breaches, inspired by her neighbor's resilience. The key moment arrived as she signed the clause, the pen gliding with purpose. In her mind, her grandmother's proud smile glowed, a memory from their last visit when the old woman had whispered, "You've made me so proud, child." The ink dried, sealing a legacy beyond her family, protection for a community, empowerment for the overlooked. The journal sat beside her, a silent witness, and the question lingered, could she sustain this power, or would new challenges test the strength of her mother's words? Amber sat at her desk at 8:46 a.m. AST on Tuesday, October 21st, 2025, the Baltimore skyline framed by her office windows at Wallace Innovations. 6 months had passed since her boardroom triumph, and the weight of her journey, from Maid to head of global partnerships, settled into a steady resolve. The hospital bracelet, a relic of desperation, rested in a drawer, replaced by the quiet pride of her mother's leather-bound journal on her desk, its inscription, "Words unlock worlds, a guiding light." Today marked a new milestone, and the air buzzed with the promise of legacy. Her heart swelled as she prepared to shape a future beyond her own. That morning, Amber met Jamal at a campus cafe near his college, where he now thrived as a freshman. His scholarship secure, he grinned over a textbook, his dreams taking flight. "You're my inspiration, sis," he said, echoing their mother's lessons. Amber smiled, mentoring him through linguistics assignments, her expertise a bridge to his potential. Later, she oversaw her grandmother's move to a top-tier care facility, the bonus-funded upgrade a gift to the woman who'd raised her. Her grandmother's frail hand squeezed hers, her eyes bright with pride. "You've unlocked the world, child," she whispered, and Amber felt the full circle of their struggle. At 2 p.m., Amber hosted a community event in Wallace Innovations' atrium, the space transformed with banners and hope. She unveiled a scholarship fund in her mother's name, funded by her $50,000 bonus, its purpose to uplift overlooked talents like her own. The room filled with neighbors, Mrs. Carter, the kids from her street, cheering as she spoke. "This is for us," she declared, her voice steady, the fund a beacon of racial justice. Priya stood beside her, a mentor-turned-partner, while Edward observed from afar, his profit-driven nod a distant approval. The event closed with applause, a ripple of change echoing her rise. As the day waned, a new contract landed on her desk, its French text a challenge and an opportunity. Amber's smile widened, her fluency, once a secret, now a tool to lead. She traced the pages, ready to harness her full talents, the Saudi deal's success a foundation for more. The clock ticked toward evening, and she turned to the journal, its pages worn but alive with her mother's wisdom. The key moment arrived as she picked up a pen, adding her own words. "From shadow to light, I carry you forward." The ink dried, a new chapter for her legacy, the whispered phrase, "Words unlock worlds," a mantra of her triumph. The story closed with Amber at the window, the skyline glowing under the dusk. She held the journal open, its pages fluttering, and whispered, "Words unlock worlds," embracing her visibility. The journey from invisibility to influence was complete. Her community protected, her family secure, her mother's knowledge a legacy transformed. Yet the horizon hinted at new battles, and the question lingered, What worlds would she unlock next?